Okay, so we've talked about with right triangles, we've talked about how to find the length of one of the sides if you know one of the angles and one of the other sides. And we've also talked about how to calculate the size of one of the angles if you know two of the other sides. So what we're going to do now is really just a combination of those two things. It's called solving right triangles, which basically means we're going to try to figure out all of the angles and the sides that we don't already know. So looking at the triangle over here, you see that we know two of the sides. The bottom side is 5, and the hypotenuse is 8. But we don't know the side on the right, which is side B. And as far as the angles, we aren't given any of the angles other than we know this is a right triangle, but angle A and angle B are unknown. Just to point out how the angles are typically capital letters, capital A and capital B, and the side lengths are usually going to be lowercase letters, in this case lowercase b, and usually the way it works is that the angle B will be opposite the side B, and angle A will be opposite side A. Again, side A, in this case, we know is 5. And then the hypotenuse is usually referred to as side C. Again, here we know that that's 8. So there are three things we're trying to figure out here. Two of the angles, angle A and angle B, and also side B. Okay, so just to write that out, so we know what we're trying to do, these are the three things we're trying to find. It does not have to be in that order. Now, as far as what we want to do first, well, the truth is we can do any of them first. Probably the easiest way to go would be, well, since we already know two of the sides, to find the third side, we can use Pythagorean theorem. We know the hypotenuse is 8. One of the sides is 5. We want to find side B. So the formula would be 5 squared plus b squared equals 8 squared. Again, always make sure the hypotenuse is on the side by itself. So we have 25 plus b squared equals 64. If you simplify that, you will get b squared equals 39. Again, I just did 64 minus 25. B squared equals 39, which means b will equal about 6.24. So, okay, that's one of the things we wanted to find. So we know that b, side b, again, the lowercase b is the side, equals 6.24. Okay, now we want to find the two angles. At this point, we have all three sides, 8, 5, and 6.24. So if we want to say let's say side angle A. So we can really use sine, cosine, or tangent because we have all three sides. Typically, though, it's usually better to use the two sides that were given originally as opposed to using the side that we got on our own. First of all, in case you made a mistake, better to use the ones that are known. You already made one mistake, you don't want to use that again. But even if you assume you got it right, this answer is rounded. It's not exactly 6.24. So if you want to get a more accurate measure for angle A, better to use the sides that we actually had given at the beginning. But you really could use the third side too. It just won't be as exact. So let's see. So for angle A, we have the opposite is 5, and the hypotenuse is 8. So we're going to want to use sine, and we get sine of A equals 5 over 8, opposite over hypotenuse. And okay, so we want to find the angle A. We're going to do the inverse sine of 5/8, or again, if you make it into a decimal, you'll get 0.625. So do the inverse sine of that, and you will get A equals 38.7 degrees. Inverse sine of 5/8 is 38.7 degrees. Okay, so we now know angle A is 38.7. Okay, now we still need to find angle B. Now we could, if you want, you could do cosine. So you could do inverse cosine of 5 over 8. Remember that for angle B, the 5 will be the adjacent. But the truth is, once you have one of the angles, the easiest way to get the other angle is just, you know they have to add up to 90, right? The two angles of the triangle, the sides for the right angle, the other two angles have to add up to 90. So if A is 38.7, to get B, you would just do 90 minus 38.7, which is 51.3. So angle B would be 51.3 degrees. So there's a few ways you can do it. Again, we could have used trig for both A and B. If we wanted to, we could have actually gotten those angles first and then found side B afterwards using a trig function. There's a number of ways to go about it, but if you're able to use the Pythagorean theorem, it's sometimes easier, and for sure, once you have one of the angles, getting the other angle is pretty simple. Let's look at another example. Over here we have another right triangle, and over here one of the angles is given, 66 degrees. One of the sides is given, which is 4. We still want to know angle A, side B, and side C. So these are the three things we need to solve for. So the easiest thing will be to get angle A. Well, again, angle A, if this is 66 degrees, to find angle A, you just do 90 minus 66, which would be 24. Now to find the two sides, well, we could start with either one. Let's say we want to start with side B. So if we want to know side B, well, we already know that the bottom side is 4. So if we're using the 66-degree angle, B is the opposite, and 4 is the adjacent. If we wanted to, we could have used angle A, but it doesn't make a difference. If you used angle A, B would be the adjacent, and 4 would be the opposite. But if we use the 66 degrees, then B is the opposite, 4 is the adjacent, which means we're going to be using tangent. And the equation we get is tangent of 66 equals B over 4, opposite over adjacent. Okay, now we calculate. Tangent of 66 is 2.24, so 2.24 equals B over 4. Here the B is on top, makes it a little easier. Multiply both sides by 4, we get B equals 8.98. 8.98. So side B is 8.98, and now we want to figure out side C. So again, we have a couple different ways we could do it. We could, use cosine of 66 degrees, but Pythagorean theorem might be the best way of doing it. So we have 4 squared plus 8.98 squared equals C squared. We're trying to find C, the hypotenuse. 4 squared plus 8.98 squared equals about 96.7. So C squared is 96.7, which means C will equal about 9.83. Again, the hypotenuse has to be the longest side, and it is 9.83. B is 8.98. Of course, side A we already knew was 4. Again, for side C, I used Pythagorean theorem. You could have also used sine, cosine, or tangent of either of the two angles. So there's usually multiple ways of going about doing it. But again, if you have two sides of the triangle, or if you have one side and one angle given, you can use those to calculate the rest of the sides and the angles of the triangle.